I still remember the first night I understood that dreams were not always innocent. My name is Chidinma Okafor. I was born on August 14, 1989 in Enugu, Nigeria, in a yellow painted bungalow along Owani Road, not far from the old St. Mulumba's Catholic Church. If you had seen me as a child, you would never have imagined what I would become or what I would eventually escape. I was the second daughter of a school teacher father, Mr. Emmanuel Okafor, and a petty trader mother, Grace, who sold dried fish and tomatoes in Ogboeteme market. We were not rich, but we were respected. My father believed deeply in education. My mother believed deeply in prayer. But there was something strange about my mother's bloodline, something no one explained openly. Every first daughter in her family was said to see beyond the veil. As a child, I thought it meant visions from God. I was wrong. It began when I was 7 years old. We had just moved from our family compound in Nsukka to Enugu because my father got a better teaching post. I missed our old mud house in the village terribly. I missed the mango tree in the backyard. I missed my grandmother's evening stories. Then the dream started. Every night, I would find myself back in that old compound, not sometimes, every night. I would see the cracked clay walls, the old wooden kitchen blackened by smoke, the gold pen, the rusted zinc roof, even my grandmother's blue wrapper hanging on the line. In the dream, everything looked real, but too quiet. No birds, no wind, no laughter, just silence. And every single time, an old woman would be sitting under the odala tree at the center of the compound. At first, I thought it was my grandmother until she called my name, Chidinma, come home. The voice sounded like my grandmother, but deeper, older, like many voices speaking at once. I would always wake up sweating. My mother became alarmed when I started describing parts of the compound I had never physically visited. Hidden shrines behind the barn, a broken ancestral hut, and even a buried clay pot near the tree. One weekend, she took me back to Nsukka. When we arrived, my grandmother's face changed because everything I described was real. That was the day my grandmother, Mama Ezinne, asked to speak to me alone. She told me something that changed my life forever. You are not just dreaming one, they are calling you. I did not understand, but she did. That night, she gave me a white chalk and told me to draw a circle around my mat before sleeping. I obeyed. For the first time in months, I did not dream of the house. But by morning, the chalk circle was smeared as if someone had stepped through it. That was the beginning. At age 9, after my grandmother's death, the dreams returned, but this time they became more aggressive. I was no longer just visiting the old house. I was being taught there. I would meet women dressed in white wrappers, their faces half shadowed, seated in circles. They taught me songs in languages I did not know while awake. They showed me symbols in the sand. They told me secrets about people in school. Your teacher is barren. Your neighbor will die. Your uncle stole land. And one by one, these things happened. By age 11, I became feared, not openly but quietly. Children avoided me because I would mention things I should not know. One day in primary 5 at Hillview Primary School, Enugu, I told a girl named Amaka not to cross the road after school. She laughed. That afternoon, a keke napep knocked her down near Zik Avenue. She survived, but broke her leg. People began whispering, "Weak child." My mother started taking me from church to church, Mountain of Fire, Deeper Life, Anglican deliverance services. Nothing worked, because what they were fighting I had not yet fully entered. At 13, my first blood came. That night, I had the dream that saved my initiation. I returned to my old village house, but this time the compound was full. Hundreds of people stood there, some living, some dead. At the center was my grandmother, young again. She wore a crown of red coral beads. She held my blood-stained cloth and she said, "Today the gate is open." I was taken into the ancestral hall behind the house, a place I later discovered had once been used for forbidden rituals. Inside, I was told a terrifying truth. Certain bloodlines use familiar places, old houses, school, former workplaces as spiritual access points. Why? Because those places hold memory, emotional residue, trauma, covenants. Dreams return people to old environments because spirits understand that memory is a gate. Your old house may not just be nostalgia. Your old school may not just be reflection. Your former job may not just be stress. Sometimes it is spiritual tracking. That night in the dream, I was made to eat roasted yam mixed with ash. When I woke, my mouth was full of death, real death. From that point, my abilities intensified. By 16, I could enter people's dreams. I know this sounds impossible, but I lived it. We were trained to observe targets through familiar environments. If someone had unresolved pain in an old school, we appeared there. If their childhood home held trauma, we used it. If their old office represented shame, we built altars around it. Why? Because the mind resists unfamiliar deception, but easily accesses familiar scenery. This is why many people keep dreaming of their childhood house, secondary school corridors, old classrooms, previous workplaces, dead relatives in old family compounds. It is often because something is using spiritual familiarity to maintain access. My first assignment was in 2007. A woman named Sister Helen from Port Harcourt had become deeply prayerful after joining a fire ministry. She was breaking free from ancestral oppression. Our task was simple: return her spiritually to her grandmother's compound through dreams. For 3 weeks, we projected her old River State village home into her sleep. Every dream looked harmless. She would simply walk around, see old rooms, hear voices, revisit childhood spaces. But each visit weakened her deliverance. Why? Because each return renewed old spiritual claims. On the 21st day, she stopped attending prayer meetings. 3 months later, she returned to alcoholism. That was when I realized how dangerous dream manipulation was. And we did this repeatedly. University campuses, former offices, old apartments, anything emotionally charged. One banker in Lagos kept dreaming of his NYSC lodge in Abeokuta. He thought it was stress. It was not. That lodge was where he first entered a sexual covenant that opened doors. By repeatedly drawing him back there in dreams, his destiny was delayed for years. By repeatedly drawing him back there in dreams, his destiny was delayed for years. This is why recurring dreams are often patterned, not random. Spirits rarely waste energy creating new scenery when old doors remain open. By my 20s, I had become deeply embedded. I moved to Lagos in 2012 and worked as a saloon manager in Surulere as my daytime cover. At night, spiritually, I was different. I was assigned to social media monitoring groups that identified vulnerable people, especially those constantly posting nostalgia, miss my old school, wish I could go back home. Those were the best days. People do not realize that obsessive backward longing can become spiritual permission. One of our strongest oppressions was called backward familiarity. One of our strongest oppressions was called backward familiarity. Keep them looking back so they never move forward. But then came the assignments that destroyed me. In 2017, I was assigned to a pastor's wife in Abuja named Pastor Evelyn Adebayo. She kept dreaming about her secondary school hostel in Ibadan, but every attempt to weaken her failed. Instead of fear, she began praying aggressively inside the dream. Then one night she saw me, face to face. She pointed at me and said, "By the blood of Jesus, I disconnect from every altar of backward captivity." Fire, real fire burned through the dream. I woke up with burns on my arm, physical burns. That was my first crack. For months, I became unstable. The old house dreams that once empowered me turned hostile. Now I was the one trapped, doors locked, ancestors accused me, dead relatives demanded loyalty. I started hearing footsteps in my Sulere apartment. My mirrors changed, my sleep vanished. Then one night, I dreamed of my childhood home again. But this time, Jesus was standing at the gate, not inside, at the gate, and he said, "You keep returning because you have not renounced ownership." I woke up screaming. The next morning, I traveled from Lagos to Enugu and then to Nsukka. For the first time in years physically, I went to the old compound. It was abandoned, collapsed, silent. But behind the hut, exactly where I had seen it in dreams, was a buried clay pot. I dug. Inside were charms, children's hair, bones, and old blood covenants tied to my family line. I ran. That week, with the help of a deliverance minister in Enugu named Pastor Samuel Eze, we prayed for 7 days. Not casual prayer, war, renunciation, breaking soul ties, rejecting dream food, revoking ancestral access. And on the seventh night, I had my final dream of that house. I stood outside. The old woman under the tree called me again. "Chidinma, come home." But this time I answered, "That is not my home anymore." Fire fell, the house burned, the tree split, and I woke free. Since then, I have helped others understand this truth. If you keep dreaming of your old house, school, or job repeatedly, especially with fear, stagnation, dead relatives, or strange repetition, you must pray seriously. Not every memory is innocent. Sometimes your past is being used as a spiritual location marker. Ask yourself, what happened there? What covenant began there? What trauma was formed there? What version of you still live there spiritually? Because deliverance is not just leaving a place physically, it is closing every door spiritually. Today, I no longer serve darkness, but I speak because too many people dismiss patterns. You think it's just a dream. Sometimes it is surveillance. Sometimes it is summons. Sometimes it is a spiritual attempt to return you to a version of yourself that God already called out. If this is happening to you, pray, renounce, break agreement, anoint your sleeping space, and never romanticize destructive places from your past. Not every old house deserves revisiting. Not every school memory is harmless. Not every former job is truly behind you, because some places do not just hold memories, they hold altars, and until those altars are broken, they may keep calling you back.